our involvement and active participation towards the cause that involved us all. We were able to devote 6 solid weeks of our time to the project, and we admit that if it wasn't for this, we ourselves may not have become so engaged with the issues of the future of architectural education. As part of the Pavilion protest, we directly contacted every school of architecture in the country to get students to participate and express their views within the heart of the RIBA. But in most schools' cases, no students participated. The biggest representation came from schools all outside of London, and most of the heads of these schools took it upon themselves to actively promote and facilitate the event and to subsidise their travel costs. A number of key players involved in running and direction of architecture schools are present at this event tonight, and we would like to ask you, what are you doing within your schools to promote and gain the collective input of your students within the debate? Are any of them here tonight? What do you feel is your responsibility in making sure that effective changes to the archaic architectural curriculum actually happen? We hope that this charter will be developed in collaboration with the widest possible group of students, graduates, tutors, heads of schools, and practicing architects. We'd like to ask those who are actively working towards publicising and engaging with people in the debate, how will you go about gaining participation and views with those outside this room tonight? How will you be getting everyone on board? Through working on our Pavilion protest, it became clear to us that you need to shout very loudly to be heard. Through working, and unfortunately there doesn't seem to be enough widespread listening and acting at the moment, or shouting, even within our own academic, professional and student body. Thank you for your time, the Live Project Britain Chapel.
So now we've done the ranting and we've done the suggesting, we're going to be moving on to the third and final part of the night, which is the panel discussion. Before I do, just like to remind you, in case you haven't noticed already, that Dan here is actually recording the night and actually drawing up the charter for change. So before you actually leave tonight, please do sign it, and it will be something that we'll be publicising and sort of getting across to everyone in the industry. Right, so the final part of the night is the panel discussion, which is going to be chaired by Zora, and we'll be welcoming 3 guests. Professor Jeremy Till, who is an architect, writer and educator, who is previously the Professor of Architecture and Head of School of Architecture at the University of Sheffield, and is now the Dean of Architecture and the Built Environment at the University of Westminster. Secondly, we have Nic Clear, who curated and presented probably one of the most popular units at the Bartlett, Unit 15, which really explored and investigated new forms of architecture through the use of CGI, animation, film and motion graphics. Very recently, he was appointed the academic leader in architectural design under the new leadership at the University of Greenwich. And thirdly, we have Helen Misselbrook, who will join the panel as well. So please welcome on to the panel Professor Jeremy Till, Nic Clear and Helen Misselbrook.
Thanks very much for agreeing to sit on our panel. So the way I'm going to do this is ask the panel to respond to the rants and the suggestions that have been made, which I've hastily written some notes down to sort of prompt the audience and to remind people what's been said. And then we'd very much like to hear what the audience has got to say. So I'd like to open the questions to the floor. So if you could be thinking about what you'd like to ask, either members of the panel or the ranters and suggesters, then that would be great. Okay, so let's start with Nic. Would you like to respond to any of the speeches that you've heard so far, or would you like me to, would it be useful to run through a couple of them, or?
Well, I did arrive a little bit late. One of the disadvantages of being in South London is that I drive down there and I have car problems, so I missed some of the earlier speeches. It seems, one of the things I agreed with is that it's very easy to sort of see the changes that are going to happen in architectural education and start despairing and say it's all going to end. Obviously it isn't. Architectural education is not a single entity anyway. There are a wide variety of different ways in which architecture is taught. There are a wide variety of outcomes that can come from architectural education. And one of those happens to be that you end up as a professional Part 3 registered architect. But as we've already heard, that's not necessarily the only way in which you can work in the building industry. And that doesn't even take into account all the opportunities that are offered by new media and new ways of using the spatial imagination that is developed through architectural education in completely different ways. So architectural education at the moment is a very kind of multiple entity. And it's going to change, and maybe some of that change is for the good. I am generally worried about the raising fees in education. I was also someone that paid absolutely nothing for my education. In fact, because I was a mature student when I went back to do my diploma, they gave me £5,000 a year to do it. I mean, this idea of a grant, of actually being paid to do education, and I come from the sort of background that if I hadn't got a grant, I probably wouldn't have gone to university. So I think that does worry me. However, it does mean we have to look at a whole range of different educational options. There is not always the necessity for students to be in big, expensive buildings in prime locations in central London or in the centres of our cities. We can do a lot more work using internet and multimedia sources. There's also, one of the things that it's actually really enjoyable about going down to Greenwich is engaging with part-time students. I mean, in the rarefied atmosphere of the Bartler, that everyone was a part-time student. It was just the fact that no one was officially called a part-time student, because nearly everyone worked. So I think we've got to look at new ways of delivering architectural education, look at professional and non-professional and other routes, because architectural education equips people with a fantastic set of skills. Some of those are useful in the building industry, some of them are wasted in the building industry. Dan Slavinsky's graphic skills in terms of producing staircase details are probably slight overkill. So I think instead of just being kind of negative about the situation, and I think one of the things that we do need to do is ask, why has the architecture and the building industries been so engaged with a certain kind of development uncritically for the last 25 years? And when the whole financial basis of that situation comes crumbling down, do we suddenly start saying, well, maybe we need to be kind of more open and looking for different sort of diverse sources? Actually, the building industry has got a lot itself to blame for a lot of the troubles that it's in. So I think we need to kind of rethink the whole way in which I'm trying to understand what architecture is, but actually what's most important is to think about what architecture could be.
Thank you very much. Jeremy?
I'm interested about why we're sitting in here and whether there are any representatives of the RIBA sitting here listening to the debate. From the education
I'm sitting on the education committee.
On the education committee, right, but not from the education department or from the council. Because I don't want to blame the RIBA, but the RIBA has set up a system, an edifice, which needs to be dismantled. The edifice has been in place since the end of the 19th century, which sets up, which Paul was talking about, this edifice of part 1, part 2, part 3, a very prescriptive set of criteria, a very time-based set of values, in which no one ever challenges the notion that it takes 5 years, because that's what everyone says it is, because that's what has been going on for so long that no one can actually say it can't be. Where the whole system of education is legislated through criteria rather than ethics, through portfolios rather than values, through objects and not the consequences of those objects, and through image and not through action. And so all of the way that the RIBA holds a mantle over education, I think, needs to be dismantled. And one of the things which is interesting in this present state of occupation, or occupations are being broken up, is this very simple thing to say that we are the 99%. that so much of our values in architecture are driven by the 1%.